Okay, as you see, we've got all of our parts laid out here to rebuild the water pump. And this is the one that was in there before, and I took it and boiled it out and brushed it up and cleaned it and painted it and put on two new Zerk fittings in here and cleaned out where the bearings are going, that type of thing. So we got a good body to begin with. You can see I've got all of the shaft and all of the parts laid out right here. So I know exactly what's going in. Plus I'm cheating because I have a diagram taped up to the wall right here. So I'm looking at that as well. So I've read all the instructions, and there's some things that you got to be careful about with a leakless water pump, because that's what we're going to make here. So first of all, the shaft is a 1/4 inch longer than what's needed, or about a 1/4 inch. And so the first thing I got to do is go grind this thing down, but I got to go measure it on the block, so I'm going to go do that right now. All right, so the first step in the instructions here talks about the clearance between the end of this water pump shaft. This is a stainless steel water pump shaft, and inside where it hits the back of the head. And it's obviously used. It's flat, but you can see that's been metal to metal almost. But the instructions say that this shaft is going to come to me a 1/4 inch longer than probably what's going to be needed. And they say to stick it in here and push the body all the way up to the block or to the head. And you just want to end up with just like a 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch amount of play in here. And I've already gone through that process. I've ground down a little bit. It took a while. I used the bench grinder to do it, and it took a while to get it flat, but it's absolutely perfect right here. I've got this in here. I don't have the washer or the bearings yet in here, but the instructions say to put it flat here without the gasket. And then once you grind it down to the right length, then when you put the gasket in there, which is 1/16 of an inch, I guess, it's going to pull it away from the back of the head and not be riding on that. So I've already done that. Now I'm going to go back and put everything together and then stick it on, and we'll see what happens here. Okay, so now I know that the shaft is a proper length. So now it's just a matter of putting all the parts in here, step at a time. This is the leakless nut. It's not even a nut. It looks like the stock nut, but it's not. I see a washer on this side, a seal, and I see a seal on that side. And in the middle are, I don't know if you can see that. You see the needle bearings in there? So that's what we got. And the instructions say that you don't need to grease this at all. It does say to put a little grease on the seals so that when the shaft goes in, there's not so much friction. So I'm going to do that. But man, that's it. No more graphite, no more rope, nothing. Hopefully this works. I've never used one of these things before. So first thing it says to do is to put the this bushing on the very back of it. So I'm going to do that. There we go. That went in really easy. Next thing is a little bit of grease on the seal, but no grease on the bearings. Boy, that just kind of goes against all logic. because you would think those needle bearings in there need some grease, but the instructions say otherwise, so we'll leave that off. If this thing burns up because of no grease, I'm going to be really upset. Okay, so then this goes on. This goes cartridge. They call this thing a cartridge. This is going to go into the center here, and they say to flip it up like this, and then put a socket. They said three-quarter inch socket and an extension down this way to punch this thing through. So that's what I'm going to do. Here's our 3/4 inch socket and extension as it's requesting. And it's all the way down, as you can see. So we have our leakless nut in place. It looks straight. I'm going to test it real quick. Oh yeah, no, that's right on. That's definitely right on. Okay, the next thing we got to do is put this cup in here, and there's a lip. There's a lip that sticks out like an 1/8 inch, 1/16 of an inch down at the bottom. So that tells me that this cup definitely goes in first right here. So let's put that on. That looks good. So there's the first cup that's in there. And the next thing is the belt. And then there's a flat washer. And then this is called a race. Basically, the bearings that go inside of that sit inside, but you got to be careful. See a little hole right there? That little hole has got to be facing the Zerk fitting so that the grease will go into that hole and into the bearing. So you got to make sure you're lining that up properly, just like that. And that race is going to hold your flat washer and your felt and your cup all in place, just like that. Okay? So then the bearing goes in. There's nothing to press in. It just dropped right in. Pretty simple. And now we'll reverse it. First is the washer. Then is the felt on the other side. And then the challenge of it all is getting that cup on here. I'm going to use a flat bar to put equal pressure on here when I pound it down. I don't want to hit it with the hammer because that'll do more damage to the cup. So let's see what happens here. Oh, look at there. Hot dog. That worked. Done. Next thing we put in here is the shaft. And that feels really good. There's no friction there. There's going to be even less friction once I put grease in the Zerk fitting for the front. They say that there is no grease that goes in here on the back, so you're not going to want to pump a bunch of grease in there, but you do still have to grease up the front bearing there, right? So that feels good. Then the other problem, or not a problem, but another part of this process is making sure that this a new aluminum 2-blade fan will go on here without rubbing. And this is really a nice one. It's been powder coated, looks really good. But they say to take the key, stick it in here like that, and put it on. And see when you rotate it, if it's rubbing at all. And if so, you have to grind down around the here on the water pump in order to accommodate so that it's not rubbing here. But there was the other thing they said, if you see paint being rubbed off here, you got rubbed. And sure enough, there we go. So what I'm going to do is grind down this hole all the way around just a little bit, just a 1/16 of an inch. And that way there'll be more clearance between the hub, the fan belt, or the blade hub, and the housing, right? In the housing. So let me do that. I'll be right back. Okay, I ground it down. You can see up here all the way around. I've got a good 1/8 of an inch clearance between this and the inside hub of the fan. So I'm good to go. There's a lot of wiggle room where this will not rub up against the body of the water pump. So this is good. I'm gonna paint it before I finish putting it all together, and I'll be right back. Okay, there's the paint job on the pump. And so now we're gonna put the rest of it together and stick it on the motor. We have our plastic washer and a collar. And these are gonna go on here next, like here. And the collar goes in, and basically what it does is it prevents the shaft from moving that direction, right? It's not gonna go any further than the body here, but we don't want it to go back into the block. And it is turning very smooth, and there's no rotation around, no play this way at all. So that's all good. So there you go. There's the water pump all done. Feels good and smooth. There's no rubbing of the hub onto the body itself right there. It's leakless. And I'll grease it up when I go to grease all the front end and all the joints here before we drive it. So happy with that. Let's get it on the motor. Okay, now it's time to put the rebuilt leakless water pump onto the block, onto the head here. The other thing I wanted to point out were these little interesting looking stud with a nut. And it's molded that way because the stock, originally the studs came out so far, and then you had a lock washer and a nut. And if you had to take the water pump off, you had to disconnect the radiator hose. You had to disconnect the radiator supports that go to the firewall and tilt back the whole radiator in order to get the water pump off. Or you had to take out the whole radiator, period, just to get it all off. So these screw right into this thing and make it a whole lot easier to take the water pump off without having to take off the radiator or the supports or the hose or anything else. So this is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is use some of this Loctite. It says head bolt and water jacket sealant, but I'm also going to use this black sealant, the Mega Black, on the whole gasket. So, and then put it on and tighten it all down here. So let's get that done. Okay, there you have it. The leakless water pump where you don't adjust this nut. We'll see if it works. I hope it works. But it's in there. Everything looks good. There's no friction here on the hub, which is really good. And hopefully I got it on there sealed so it won't leak around this. So let's try our brand new belt. Stick it on here. Of course, we don't have the generator, but I just wanted to see if it was all lined up, and sure enough, it's all lined up just perfect, absolutely perfect. So that looks good. And then last but not least is our grease preventer or our pump cover to keep the front from spewing grease all over. All right, there we go. That is on. That is designed to keep grease from, used to be both bearings, now it's only the front bearing, from getting all over the place. So that's on as well. So we're looking good here. There's our water pump fan, and so far so good. So let's keep working at it, and hopefully we'll get this thing running one of these days. If you'd like to be notified when new videos are published as we restore this 1934 four-door, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.